Alright, my next slot car project. My girlfriend wants an old truck painted pink with a purple interior. So I got a chassis here to use. So I'm going to set the box aside a minute, move the paint. I already took the body, marked out my lines for the front axle and the rear axle. And I got my chassis laid out, and I went and got all the other tubes I'm going to need for the chassis today. I run the 65 thousandths hollow tube, steel tube, stainless, and I have the brass tube that it fits inside for the hinges because this is going to be a flex chassis. I'm going to build it so it will, flex and give, and I don't have to put wheelie bars on it. So I'm going to set my little GoPro camera there at the tripod, and we're going to start soldering this chassis together. Also, so you know, this is the solder I use. I get it at the hobby shop. I like it. It's a nice, good solder. Works very well. And then I use this liquid flux on it. And it really makes it work good. Now my soldering gun, my soldering iron, yeah, not so much. It's an actual old Radio Shack one from like the 70s. And I can't tell you how many projects I built with this thing. I used to build Star Trek props and stuff, so and I built a dozen slot car chassis and never had a problem with it. Some people say, oh, it doesn't get hot enough, you're using the wrong this or wrong that. You know what, too bad. That's what I use. It works for me. You work what works for you. So I'm gonna set up the camera, start soldering this chassis together. Alright, so first set the rods aside. I'm going to take the engine mount. This is the engine mount. The motor mount's going to go in here first. So I'm going to take the liquid flex, butter up the slot, butter up the motor mount. I'm going to stick the motor mount into the lower chassis part, right there like that. We're going to tin up our iron. Real good. Okay, add a little more onto it. Alright. Flip this over carefully. I'll hold that. And I'm going to solder it. I touch it to it, hold it a minute, and then I draw it across. There we go. Got that side. Alright, now before I do this side of it, I want to make sure that these are going to work and line up well. So I'll check their fit, snap that into place. It looks like that's going to sit just fine. Okay, perfect. So we butter it up with our liquid flux. Alright. Tin our iron. Load the iron up. Okay. And we touch the iron to it, let it sit for a minute, and then draw it. And it makes a very nice solder, as you can see. Okay. So I'll set it up and do the other side. Oh, I almost forgot. I got to do this upper brace. So I already got it flexed. Load up our iron. And I'm going to hold it like this touch it to it. Let it sit for a minute and then draw it up, and there we go. Perfect solder. You don't have to get it real hot. Doesn't have to be burning, scalding hot. Just gotta be hot enough to get the solder in there melted and affixed to it. Alright, so the same thing on this other side. We line everything up. Fits together nice and tight. We butter it up with a little flux. And in that clef. Okay. We load up our iron. Now this is a large thing, so we're going to load it up a lot. And it's hard to do. I have essential tremors. I have a shakes really bad. It's a neurological problem. So it's really hard for me to do this and draw it. And I glued that on. It's kind of like gluing it together, but with metal. It's like welding. I used to build race cars for over 8 years. Pro stocks. So worked at a machine shop for over 20. So we do that upright. And there we go. Now, like I said before, we're going to do along this part of the motor mount. So we want that motor bulkhead really on there good. Hit it with some flux real quick. Still in shot, yep. Load up our iron. Okay. Alright, hold it. We touch it there. Give it a minute. And then draw it. And see? It leaves a nice little bead. And we'll just run our iron across there a little bit. Not bad. A little more over here on this side, so that's no big deal. We add a little more to the iron. And come over here. Touch it where we need it. And there we go. Look at that. Nice bead all the way across. Nice and even. That ain't going to go anywhere. You know, this isn't an airplane. It's not a NASCAR. It's not going to go 200 miles an hour. Alright. So now, we got that set. We can set that aside. On the front piece here, because we're going to build a flexing chassis, we got to do a hinge right here. Now to do that hinge, get over here a little bit where you can see the front part of the chassis now. Okay, so this, the rear piece, will mount here and it will be hinged to the front piece. Okay, so first we got to prepare our hinge move here. And I use this small copper tube. Here. The 65 fits right inside of it. Perfect, nice fit. So we take our Sharpie. Okay. We measure this across. Alright. Then we subtract where our 90s are going to be. Alright. And then we mark it. Alright. And to double check that, we come up here. See how it says? See? So we want our 90 to go like this. Right here. And if we ran this brass tube all the way to the edge there wouldn't be enough room for the 90. So we got to come back a little bit. So right here's where we want to cut it, right where I marked it. So I'll cut that with the cutoff wheel. little piece. I take a piece of the 65 and I make sure that everything fits in there well. Okay, everything does. Alright, so we wipe that off, make sure I get any oil off of it from my hands of handling it. We'll just dry it with a paper towel, really. Alright, so we set this here up against that. Okay, see that? Is that all the same? Yep, okay. Alright, same thing, we butter it up with the flex real good. Okay, we get that fairly centered. This eyeball, it doesn't absolutely have to be perfect, just has to be. Alright, now we're going to tin our iron up. Load the iron with our solder. And we don't want it to move. And there we go. And that's it. And that's on there pretty good. Alright, I'll smooth that out. And then I'll bend up my hinges. Alright. Now we have the hinge soldered onto the front nose piece. Now we line up where we want our front axle, and we marked on our board. And we line up the rear axle where we marked on the board. Alright. Now we gotta make our 90s. Okay. So to make the 90s, let's take an old pair of pliers, big old square pliers, and I'll make my 90. I have about an inch, half an inch to go through. And I fold my 90 like that. Fold your 90. Alright. It's not quite a 90 yet. Needs a little more. There we go. That looks good. Alright, so we put that on there like that. We lay it down like that. We gotta make sure this lines up here like that. Okay. Eyeball your lines, make sure everybody's happy. Okay. We take our Sharpie and mark where we gotta cut it. Right there. Right there. Double check it. Yep, that's gonna work perfect. Okay. So now we gotta make one more of these. I gotta cut it off first. Alright. Now we've got that one cut and made. So now we gotta bend this one the same. So grab it about the same amount in. Double check it. Yep. And we bend our 90. A little more. There we go. Alright. Now we hold the two together, like so. And yep, got the same. And then we mark it and cut it off. we'll have two of the exact same tubes with a 90 in it. Okay, now these should be our hinge. We put it in there, a little spread, that's okay. Once we get our line up there and our line up here, there we go. See how it is? Alright. Now technically we can solder that just as it is right now. Okay? So I'm going to double check everything, make sure everything's square. Everything's lined up right. The problem when it's bent like that, but it does. It's nice that it puts pressure on it for you. Just want to make sure everything's square and straight. Straight as you can get it. I mean, your guide's going to hold it in. Okay. So then we butter up where we're going to solder with our liquid flux. Alright. We load our iron like that, and then we touch it to it. Let the ferment heat up, and then draw it. Like that, let that dry. Do it again on the other side. Load the iron up, come over here, touch it to it, sit a minute, and draw it. There we go. A little shallow on this side a little bit. Not a problem. I'll add a little more. Right here at the end. There we go. That's good enough. Remember, guys, this is just a slot car. It's not a real car. It's not going on the road. It's not doing 200 miles an hour. And it's not going for 200 miles. Okay, now we have our central hinge done. Now we got to do our rails on the outside. Okay, so we get our copper tube out again. Our copper tube. We want to just cut a little piece right here. So my body, my pin's going to go back here. Okay, so we don't want that to go and hit that. So I'm actually going to run it a little longer. I'm going to come out to here with it. Alright, so now I got to cut and make two of those. Alright, now we have those. Let's run our little piece through it to make sure that, see, they get little burrs and stuff when you cut them off. So you want to I want to make sure that goes through fine. I've actually had to run a drill through them sometimes because they'll get little burrs and bends. We want to make sure the 65 tube goes in but fits snugly, because you don't want it too loose. You get a loose fit and it will have troubles. Believe me, I've been there. In my last car, I used a smaller diameter tube, and it was a pain in the ass. It was definitely a pain in the ass. Alright, I think I got these two tubes ready. There we go. Perfect. Alright. Same dealie. Push it up here next to the chassis. Oop. Let it roll onto the floor. Alright. I'll do one side at a time. Alright, so we want that there. Alright. Butter it up. There we go. Load our iron. There we go. Probably not good to get that on your finger. It's okay. I worked at a machine shop. I used to run an acid tank. My hands have been in acid a lot, so that little flux acid ain't nothing. I want to make sure it don't move. Alright. And there we go. I'll load a little more on that one. It's a little shaky. There we go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Alright. Now the last thing is take another 65 tube. They are crimped off and mashed, so you got to cut that off and round it, make sure it's free. Alright. We slide that up into there, like so. Okay. Make sure it goes in and out just fine. And we mark it. Alright. Now we gotta make two of those. So we pull it out, cut it. Okay, now we have our outer rails. So we stick our outer rails up into the sleeves, cylinders. Okay. like so. Oop. Oh. Get in there. Now I lube these when I go racing. I lube all of these hinge mechanisms. Okay. And there we go. These are all ready to go. Come a little bit into it. It's okay. Make sure it's straight. Alright. Ready to solder now. So, let's see. First I want to get this to make sure she's all right. Because it's acting like it's not wanting to lay proper. So we're going to hit that right there. Oh yeah, beautiful now. Oh, look at that. See? When something isn't lining up right, just go over it with the iron again, and it'll be perfect. So now we butter these up with our acid flux. See, now I use the acid flux like this liquid flux, and a flux rod, because this will be, if you notice, as you add this to the iron, see, all the acid's going away. It's burning up. By putting the liquid down here, it makes up for that. Now we touch to it, hold, and then draw. A perfect bead. Perfect bead. Same thing. Load the iron up. So. Touch it and hold it. And then draw. Look at that. Another perfect bead. And I have essential tremors, so I shake like a leaf. Alright, I'm going to check all my alignments. Still in a line, still in a line. Our lines are lining up. We're good to go. Alright, now for the front axle. So, we have a line where the front axle goes. So we simply butter it up. And apart with our flux. Load the iron. Okay, so after doing the center hinge, you do the same that you did here for these pieces. Slip in and out, cut them to length, solder those on, run the bars in, solder them on. Now you have a hinged flex chassis, so that it will pivot here, and these will go in and out, like that. You'll flex. Then for the front axle, I put the mount in. For trucks, I like to use the larger axle, so I can get the little fat tires on the front instead of the small axle, because of the better gearing and stuff in the back. So I will take the larger tube and I will set it up there and cut it and solder it there when I'm ready for the front. But there's the chassis for my girlfriend's truck. We're going to do the Chip Foose F100. Chip Foose F100. I believe this is a 56. I had a 53, but I traded it for this one because she liked the Foose one better. And she wants it pink. So we're going to go with the candy pink. Good old Rust-Oleum. Alright, so there's the chassis. Now the body, I already cut the inner fender wells out. I'm going to start doing the hood and the radiator supports and stuff. The bed, I will do like I do all my truck beds.